Welcome to the Benton MacKaye Trail. Boy, when you've been hiking for miles and miles all day with a heavy pack on your back, it sure does feel good to take your burden off for a little while. It reminds me of a story I read one time. There's a book, it's the #2 best-selling book in the world. Maybe you've heard of it. The #1 best-selling book in the world is still the Holy Bible. The #2 best-selling book of all time in the world is a book by John Bunyan called Pilgrim's Progress. And it's an allegory of the Christian life. And in the book, a young boy by the name of Pilgrim, he's trying to get rid of his burden. He just wore out carrying that burden around. And he asked somebody, he said, "Sir, do you know where I could get rid of my burden?" And the man tells him, says, "Well, I hear there's a mountain over there. If you'll climb to the top of that mountain, I think you can get rid of your burden." He tried to walk to the top of that mountain. He said as he got closer to it, he said there was lightning and thunder, and it was just a fearful, frightening thing, and he couldn't get rid of his burden there. That's an allegory for the law. Keeping the law won't get rid of your burden. So he met somebody else, and they said, "Well, I believe if you'll go to this little town down here that you can get rid of your burden." The name of the town was Formality. So he went down to the town of Formality, and he couldn't get rid of his burden there. And of course, that's an allegory for like doing all the formal things, practicing your religion and going to church and doing all the formal things. But that in itself, while it may be a really good thing, it won't get rid of that burden for you. Somebody else might tell you, so if you go down to the river, you can get rid of that burden. Well, you can go through the river of baptism. That alone won't get rid of the burden. Well, young Pilgrim, he finally met a man on his hike, and that man's name was Evangelist. And he said, "Mr. Evangelist, can you tell me where I can get rid of this burden?" He said, "I believe I can." He said, "If you'll go right down here, you'll find a street called Straight." He said, "Enter in at that narrow gate and follow that street called Straight. And when you get to the end of that," he said, "if you look, I believe you can get rid of your burden." So young Pilgrim decided to do what the evangelist said, and he went in the straight and narrow way, and he said, "I began to travel on that way," and he said, "I saw that it led up a little hill." And he said, "As I got closer, I could see that there was one on top of that hill." And as he said, I got closer, and I could see that the one on top of that hill was hanging on a cross. And he said, when I got close enough to see the one that was hanging on the cross, he said, my burden plopped off my back, rolled down the hill, and disappeared into an empty tomb. When you get close enough by faith to see the one who hung on the cross for you, you'll get rid of that burden that you've been trying to find a way to get rid of it. We'll see you next week on the Benton MacKaye Trail or someplace else here on the Weekly Word. See ya.